I didn't cry anymore, not the way I used to. Somewhere along the way, I learned how to hurt quietly, how to tuck my sadness into corners where no one could see it. The house stayed clean, the food warm, the routine polished. To everyone else, we looked like a perfectly normal couple. But Leonardo? He had this way of making me feel invisible while pretending I was adored. And when he strayed, again and again, he'd say things like, "You'll never find anyone better than me." Like that was supposed to comfort me. Sometimes I believed him. Or maybe I was just too tired to believe in anything else. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. She looked so capable, so put together, but inside I felt hollow. I told myself I was staying for the sake of our daughter, for the house, for stability. But the truth? I was scared. Scared of failing, scared of being alone, scared that maybe, just maybe, he was right, and I wasn't worth more. Then came that evening. I was picking up Maya's toys in the living room, lost in thought, when I felt her tug on my sleeve. Just a gentle touch, like she didn't want to interrupt. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes and asked, "Mommy, why are you always sad when you think no one's looking?" I swear my heart didn't just crack, it collapsed. That one question cut through every excuse I'd ever made. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. For the first time in years, I couldn't lie to myself. I didn't answer her right away. How could I? What do you say when your child sees through the armor you've spent years perfecting? I knelt beside her and held her face in my hands, trying to smile. But I saw it, the worry behind her innocence, the way her little fingers reached for mine like she was the one trying to comfort me. That's when I realized something terrifying. My sadness wasn't invisible. It was teaching her something I never meant to pass down. She was only 8, but children have this way of knowing the truth, don't they? No matter how gentle our lies, they feel what we bury. I thought I was protecting her by staying, keeping the family together, shielding her from the chaos. But in that moment, I saw what I'd really been doing. Showing her a version of love that came with pain, silence, and pretending. And that terrified me more than any lonely night ever could. Because if I stayed, she'd think this was normal. I tucked her into bed that night and watched her sleep, her little hands curled into fists, like she was still holding on to me even in her dreams. And I just stood there, completely still. Because somewhere deep inside me, a part of me was waking up, the part I'd buried under all the fear and compromise. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have answers. But I did have a question echoing in my mind now, just like hers. Why am I always sad when no one's looking? And suddenly, not knowing wasn't enough anymore. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed beside Leonardo, listening to his breathing, feeling the distance between us stretch like a canyon. He turned away, as he always did, and I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open, heart pounding. Not with fear this time, but with something else. A question, a spark, a quiet knowing. What if my daughter deserved a version of me that wasn't always hurting? What if I did too? I thought about the woman I used to be, before him. God, she was bold. She laughed without apologizing. She had plans. She believed in her own worth. Somewhere along the way, I handed pieces of her away, thinking love meant sacrifice, thinking endurance was strength. But looking at Maya's little face, I realized she doesn't need a mother who survives. She needs one who lives, one who shows her that love should feel safe, not small. That night, something shifted. I didn't make any big moves. I didn't pack a bag or slam a door. But inside me, the ground began to move. Something cracked open. It wasn't a decision yet, not quite. But it was a beginning. Because when your own child holds up a mirror to your pain, you can't look away forever. And whether I was ready or not, I knew the question had been asked, and now I had to find the answer. That night, after Maya fell asleep, I found myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, just staring. I touched my face like I was trying to recognize it. Not the makeup or the lines that time left behind, but me, the woman I used to be. I could still see her in there, buried under layers of compromise and quiet suffering. She hadn't vanished. She'd just gone silent. And suddenly, I missed her. God, I missed her so much. Before Leonardo, I was full of life. I danced barefoot in the kitchen, I read books just because they made me feel something, and I dreamed out loud. I was ambitious, fierce even. But somewhere along the way, I dimmed my own light to make space for his shadow. Every time he cheated and told me I was lucky he stayed, I believed a little less in myself. And every time I forgave him, it wasn't because I trusted him. It was because I doubted me. I started thinking about all the things I'd given up in the name of love. Friendships I let fade, job offers I declined, opinions I swallowed, and all the times I looked the other way, just to keep the peace. But there's no peace in losing yourself, is there? There's only numbness. A slow, quiet erosion of who you are. I didn't leave him back then because I was afraid I couldn't survive alone. But that night, looking at my reflection, I saw something terrifying. I wasn't surviving with him either. I sat on the bathroom floor for what felt like hours, knees pulled to my chest, the cool tiles pressing against my skin. And in that stillness, a truth began to rise. Not loud, but steady. If I stay, Maya will grow up thinking love looks like this. A woman shrinking. A home built on silence. Smiles that don't reach the eyes. And I couldn't stand the thought of her mistaking survival for happiness. Of her thinking that this was what a mother should look like when she loves. She watches me more than I realized. The way I bite my lip when I'm anxious. The way I move quickly to clean up his messes. Not just around the house, but in conversation, in mood, in energy. And I wondered what she was learning. That love means disappearing? That kindness means swallowing your voice? That being a woman means enduring until there's nothing left? No. No. I couldn't let her carry that forward like some inherited curse. And then I thought about her future, the woman she'd become. One day, someone might hurt her. Someone might try to convince her she's not enough. And if I stayed in this, what would I have taught her? To accept it? To make herself smaller, quieter, more obedient? That night, I didn't have a roadmap, but I did have a promise. I wouldn't let my daughter confuse pain with love. And to do that, I had to stop doing it myself. I went to bed that night with my heart pounding, but not from fear, from awareness. Like something inside me had shifted into place, quietly but firmly. I didn't tell Leonardo. He kissed me on the cheek, distracted, already half asleep, and I just watched him. I wondered how many years I'd spent trying to make him love me better, when I should have been learning to love myself louder. For the first time in a long while, I didn't reach for his hand. I pulled the blanket tighter around my own body. That small gesture felt like the beginning of something. And in the darkness, I started remembering the woman I used to be. Not in pain, but with a kind of reverence. Like I was unearthing a version of myself I had once loved deeply. The one who laughed at her own jokes. The one who didn't apologize for taking up space. She was still there, somewhere beneath the layers of guilt and doubt and silence. And I was going to find her again, piece by piece, no matter how long it took. Because I wanted Maya to know that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "You deserve more." So I laid there, staring at the ceiling, no longer numb. I wasn't ready to leave yet. Not physically. But emotionally, the first wall had cracked. And once that happens, you can't pretend it didn't. You can't unsee your own worth once it shows itself. Something inside me had been buried for so long, I'd forgotten how to feel it. But now that it was stirring again, I couldn't look away. Not for him. Not for fear. Not anymore. I started small. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just little things, like texting an old friend from college I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name popped into my mind while I was making coffee, and without overthinking, I hit send. It felt strange at first, like I was reaching across a canyon I wasn't sure I could cross. But when she replied, warm, surprised, genuinely happy to hear from me, something flickered inside. I hadn't realized how much I missed being seen, just for who I was. Then came the resume. God, I stared at that blank document for hours, unsure of where to begin. It had been so long since I even thought about my own career, my own goals. But I opened my laptop anyway, fingers trembling slightly, and typed my name. Just that, Carla Mendez. And there it was, a beginning, a reminder that I wasn't just a wife or a mother or someone constantly trying to manage another person's chaos. I was still a woman with skills, with ambition, with value. I found a therapist online one afternoon while Leonardo was at work. My palms were sweating just making the call. I wasn't sure what I was even going to say. But when the receptionist answered, I heard myself ask for an appointment. Just like that. And after I hung up, I cried. Not from fear this time, but from a strange kind of relief. Like I was finally letting someone help me hold what I'd been carrying alone for so long. Quiet steps, yes. But every one of them felt like a crack of light through a locked door. I became meticulous, almost methodical, not out of paranoia, but out of purpose. I started keeping a folder, locked and hidden, filled with screenshots, emails, credit card statements. Every late-night message Leonardo thought I'd never see. Every hotel receipt he didn't bother hiding. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it for clarity. For the day I would need to look at the truth without flinching. The day I'd stop gaslighting myself into believing things weren't as bad as they felt. Each time I printed another page, I felt a strange mix of grief and strength. Grief for the years I'd given to a man who never really chose me. Strength because I was finally choosing myself. I found a lawyer through a woman in my therapy group. Quiet, brilliant, direct. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me like someone who had done this before, many times, and lived to tell. And in that first meeting when she said, "Whenever you're ready," I knew. I was getting close. At night, I read to Maya with more intention. Stories about brave girls and kind hearts, about finding your voice and standing your ground. And I watched her, how she leaned into me, how she laughed at the funny parts, how her breathing slowed when I whispered the last line. I wondered if she could sense it, the shift in me. I wasn't just reading anymore. I was becoming the kind of woman the heroines in those stories would look up to. And for the first time in a long time, I liked who I was becoming. During the day, I moved like a woman with secrets, not shameful ones, but sacred. I started taking long walks while Maya was at school, breathing in the air like I hadn't in years. I noticed things again. The rustle of trees, the smell of jasmine near the corner cafe, the way my shoulders finally sat a little lower, like the weight was beginning to lift. I wasn't free yet, but I was waking up to the idea that freedom was possible. That maybe I didn't have to ask for it. I could claim it. Leonardo hadn't noticed. Not really. He was too distracted, too used to my silence to realize it had started to carry a different tone. I no longer asked where he was going. I no longer flinched when he came home late. My power wasn't loud or confrontational. It was calm. And in that calm, I began to feel dangerous, in the best way. I was building something, slowly and carefully, like a woman preparing for a storm, But this time, not to survive it. To end it. The pieces were falling into place. I had support. I had proof. I had a plan. But more than that, I had something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. And while Leonardo made his usual plans for their upcoming anniversary, I was making mine too. Except mine didn't involve pretending. Mine involved truth. And this time, I wouldn't be the one caught off guard. The morning of our anniversary felt still. Not peaceful, not quite, but intentional. I woke up before the sun, made coffee the way I like it, and watched the steam rise as I sat in silence. Leonardo was still asleep. His face looked soft, almost innocent, like he wasn't the man who had made me question my worth for over a decade. But I wasn't fooled anymore. That version of me, the one who needed his approval to feel enough, she didn't live here anymore. I dressed with care, not to impress him, but to remind myself of who I'd become. A fitted black blouse, dark jeans, my wedding ring left sitting on the dresser. He noticed, of course. Said I looked nice in that offhanded way he had. I nodded and smiled, saying thank you without letting the compliment settle. I wasn't hungry, but I made breakfast for Maya and packed her lunch with her favorite snacks. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You smell happy today." And for the first time in years, I was. That evening, he had made dinner reservations, some upscale place we'd gone to once when we still pretended to like each other in public. He thought it would be like always, a performance. We'd smile for strangers, drink wine we couldn't pronounce, and ignore the hollow space between us. But I had other plans. I brought a folder in my bag, neatly labeled. Divorce papers, copies of emails, bank records. Everything he never thought I'd have the courage to hold, let alone hand over. He ordered for me, like he always did. Steak, medium well, as if I hadn't stopped eating red meat months ago. I didn't correct him. Let him play his part, one last time. The waiter poured the wine, and Leonardo launched into some rehearsed speech about reconnecting, about fresh starts, all with that charming smile he wore when he wanted something. I nodded, let him speak, my hands resting calmly on my lap. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I was just done. When the main course arrived, I reached into my bag. I didn't make a scene. No tears, no raised voice. I simply slid the folder across the table and watched his expression change. Slowly at first, then all at once. He flipped through the pages, his mouth tightening, eyes scanning for denial, for escape, for control. But there was none left to find. I took a sip of water, folded my hands, and waited. For the first time in our marriage, he was the one with nothing to say. And when he finally looked at me, stunned and pale, I met his gaze without blinking. "You always said no one else would love me," I said quietly. "But you forgot something important." I paused, not for effect, but because I wanted to feel the weight of the words I was about to say. "I already have someone who does. Maya. And now, I'm learning to love myself too." I didn't need applause. I didn't need his reaction. The power wasn't in what he did next. It was in what I had just done. He tried to speak, some blend of defense and disbelief, but I stood up before the excuses could take shape. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. Just finished. There's a silence that comes when a woman finally chooses herself. It's not cold. It's clean. I left the folder on the table, untouched steak cooling on my plate, and reached for my coat. He didn't follow me. Maybe for the first time, he understood that I wasn't bluffing, that the woman he thought would never leave had already gone. Outside, the night air was crisp. I walked to the car where Maya was waiting with my sister, her little face lighting up when she saw me. "Did you have a nice dinner?" she asked, kicking her feet from the back seat. I smiled and brushed her hair off her forehead. I did exactly what I needed to, I told her. She didn't ask more, and I didn't explain. She didn't need to know the details, only that I was different now, that the story was changing. I drove us home, to our home. A small apartment we had quietly rented 2 weeks earlier. The furniture was mismatched, the walls still bare, but it was peaceful in a way our house had never been. Maya curled up beside me on the couch, blanket pulled to her chin, and whispered, "I'm glad we're here." I kissed her temple, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to apologize for anything. I had walked away from a life that almost broke me, and for once, I wasn't looking back. The mornings feel different now. There's a softness to them, not because life is suddenly easy, but because it's finally mine. I wake up before Maya and brew coffee while the sun spills through our kitchen window, warming the chipped counter and mismatched mugs. The silence isn't heavy anymore. It's gentle, freeing. I play music while I cook breakfast. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast. And I catch myself humming along. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I did that. Our little apartment is far from perfect, but it feels like home in a way the old house never did. I've started a small business from our living room, organizing home spaces for other women who feel buried under chaos. It's slow, humble work. But it's mine. Every client, every dollar earned, feels like a quiet declaration. I'm rebuilding. Not for anyone else, not to prove anything. Just because I finally believe I'm worth investing in. And I want Maya to grow up seeing that. Sometimes I catch her watching me, the same way she used to, but now with something softer in her eyes, like she sees me differently, like I see me differently. And one night, as we baked cookies, she looked up from the mixing bowl and said, "You smile more now, Mommy. You laugh out loud." I didn't even know what to say. My throat tightened, my hands stilled. All I could do was smile back at her, heart wide open. Because she was right. I had come back to life, and she had noticed. I pulled her into my arms, flour still on my hands, and kissed her forehead. "Because now I'm free," I whispered. "And I promise you, I'll never choose fear over joy again." She didn't respond with words, just wrapped her arms around my waist and held on, like she believed me, like she felt the difference. And I stood there in that tiny kitchen, holding my daughter, thinking about how far we'd come. Not just in distance, but in truth. Fear used to run my life. It told me I couldn't do better. That I wasn't enough. That leaving would break everything. But it was staying that nearly broke me. Now, when I look around, at the laundry basket on the floor, the shoes by the door, the sticky notes on the fridge, I don't see chaos. I see freedom. I see a life I'm choosing every single day. Not out of desperation, but out of hope, out of belief, and more than anything, out of love. It's not perfect. Some nights I still feel the ache of what I lost. There are bills, long days, and moments where I wonder if I'm getting it all right. But then I hear Maya laugh from the other room, or she calls out, "Mom, come see this." And I remember, I didn't just leave something behind. I walked toward something too. A version of life where love doesn't hurt, where I can breathe, where my daughter is safe. And I am too. Tonight, after Maya went to bed, I sat on the couch alone with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker through the window. No noise, no tension, just peace. I scrolled through the photos on my phone, landing on the one I took earlier. Me and Maya in the kitchen, covered in flour, mid-laugh, both of us looking completely alive. I stared at it for a moment, then opened a message to my lawyer, attached the photo, typed one simple line beneath it. This is what winning looks like, and it is. Not the kind of winning that comes with applause or spotlights, but the quiet, defiant kind, where you reclaim your voice, your name, your joy. where you stop surviving and start living, where you become the kind of mother, woman, and soul that your younger self would be proud of. I didn't get here overnight. It took pain. It took reckoning. It took a question from an 8-year-old that shattered my world and saved me. I still don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I will never again trade myself for the illusion of love. I will never again stay where I'm not seen, and I will raise my daughter to believe in joy, not fear, in strength, not silence. What stayed in the end wasn't pain or bitterness. It was love, real love. The kind that holds your hand in the dark and says, "We're okay now." And finally, we are.